Hello out there, all you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear, listening into another Game of Thoughts discussion. In this, I'm going to be talking about the new Switch revision slash Switch Pro that everybody keeps talking about. First of all, I'm going to say this candidly. I don't think it's a Switch Pro if it's going to be a revision. There's the one thing I don't think people understand. When a revision of hardware comes out, it just simply replaces the model that's already on the market. It's the same thing, just with some different bits that maybe allow it to operate a little bit more efficiently or at a lower cost to the company developing it. Just like there were multiple revisions of the PS2 at one point. And I'm not talking about the PS2 Slim versus the regular PS2. I mean, the regular PS2 had multiple revisions. There were different boards in them. It's something that happens. Just like with the Sega Genesis, there were multiple revisions of the Sega Genesis. And I'm not talking about the Sega Genesis Model 1 or the Model 2 and the Model 3. I mean, each one had a different set of versions to them. Especially the Model 1, because if you had, there was one that you had that would just boot straight into the game. It wouldn't even show the little license screen. It would just boot straight into the game. I remember because I had one of them. And then later ended up with a Model 1 that did show the license agreement stuff before it went into the game. So a revision, being something to replace what is currently already on the market, is a different thing. We're not talking 3DS and new 3DS, where it is a different model altogether with some parts actually being different in it. It is, and I don't mean different as in, oh, it's changed up to do the exact same thing. No, I mean different as in it is capable of doing other things that the original was not. And I think that people forget that type of stuff. And people seem to forget that the Switch already had a revision as it is. One that replaced the model that originally came out. The first wave of Switches. And I think we're on the third wave of different Switch models. I'm not certain. It could be. Maybe we might still be on the second. But either way, it's still... Okay, so the Switch and Switch Lite are different versions of the same platform. They're still in the same family. But a Switch Pro would be another system in that family. It wouldn't have to be a revision or a replacement for the current Switch. It'd be a Switch Plus, basically. This is the Nintendo Switch plus these things. And then that's why Switch Lite is the Nintendo Switch minus these things. And that's one way to think about it. Like, okay, say for example, and now I'm going back to the 3DS. For example, the 3DS comes out and then we get a 2DS, which took away one of the screens and removed the capability for it to do stereoscopic 3D. New 3DS comes out. It has slightly beefier hardware. I think it's overclocked a little bit in comparison to the regular 3DS. And on top of that, it has additional functions and features that are not standard to the 3DS. Like it has the additional buttons, has the C nub. Several other things are added to it. But then the new 2DS comes out. And that, again, that's a new 3DS, but it takes away the ability to do stereoscopic 3D. All of these systems run the same games, barring a few that don't work for the 3DS or the 2DS, and they just only work on the new 3DS and new 2DS. That's the difference between revision and a newer model in the family. There can be multiple revisions that don't really change anything other than how maybe the parts that are in it, but it doesn't change how it operates. Now, if it's a Switch Pro, then it's going to be a different SKU completely. It won't be replacing a current SKU. It'll be a different one altogether. So when all these outlets talk about something replacing, and I'm looking at them like, first of all, if they're going to come out with a beefier Switch, I doubt that they're going to drop it at the same price as the current model that's on the market. Just my guess. I don't think they're going to drop it at the same price as the current one on the market. But then again, hey, maybe they could be wrong on the price. If that is happening, they could be fully wrong on the pricing of it. Because, I mean, you got the Switch Lite at $200 and a regular Switch currently at $300. Why would they drop a newer, more beefy, more powerful version of the same platform at the same price as the other one? Doesn't quite jive, right? So if I'm going to be putting out better hardware, I'm at least increasing the price by $50. I'm at least increasing it that much. Maybe they don't want to go to $400 territory, but I'm at least going to increase it by $50. That's the bare minimum where I'd be increasing, because there has to be a differentiation in the pricing. Now, I would assume 100 would be the sweet spot because you're trying to promote this as being the better version of that other platform, and you can still sell the other one because one does more than the other does. But again, that's me assuming things. I don't know for certain. I mean, it just wouldn't make sense unless they were going to put this one out and then price drop the other one by $50 so that it wouldn't be, more cost. It wouldn't be the same price. There's no way these two things can exist at the same price, is all I'm saying. If one's supposed to be a beefier version of the other, there's no way they can exist at the same price. But then again, hey, maybe the reports are right and Nintendo is calling a Hail Mary on this one, and they're just going to wipe out the current line of Switches, which is stupid, mind you. Which is very stupid, mind you, because then that means that they don't have to prepare games for that model. And if people have that model of Switch and they're not interested in buying another one, they're eventually going to run into a situation where they can't play any games. So again, it might not be the brightest idea. Maybe I'm just looking at things a little different than other people. But with that many units out there, I don't think that they would just be simply replacing the current model with a more powerful one. I think that they would bring out another machine at a different price point, and people who are getting themselves overhyped about this, or just looking way too deeply into it, are assuming too much. And that's my take on it anyway. Again, I could be completely wrong. But I'm just going based on what we have seen over time and what logically makes the most sense in this current situation. The problem is people are clamoring so much for a Nintendo Switch Pro. They're clamoring so much for a more powerful machine, and they're making themselves believe automatically that that's what it is, that if the announcement turns out to be exactly what I'm saying it probably is, people are going to be mad. They're going to be pissed off. They're going to throw hissy fists, and they're going to say, well, Nintendo isn't listening. They don't know what they're doing. When again, if you pay attention to history and you follow the patterns that have happened before, you can pretty easily figure out what the most likely situation is. But a lot of people don't want to stop and think. They get themselves drummed up on hype. And like, how many times has Bloomberg called for a more powerful Nintendo Switch, and it has yet to happen? Because they've done it multiple times already. This isn't a one-time deal. This is something that has happened multiple times. Just like back when Nintendo was first releasing the Switch, not even first releasing, but back when it was called the NX, and they had that report coming from, was it Digitimes, talking about how many units that they were producing. And I'm like, there's no way in the world that they're just going to produce that many units that heavily, with the fact that the Wii U didn't fare as well as it should have. And yeah, that's why people had so much trouble finding Nintendo Switches right off. Because they didn't put that many out. They didn't put as many out as people thought they were going to. So again, put your critical thinking caps on, people. Look back at the situation, pay attention to what's already happened, and think about this critically before you start making assumptions and getting yourself hyped up over something that may not actually happen. That's the only thing I'm trying to get out here for people to understand. Like, it may just not be what you think it is. So don't get upset if it turns out to not be that. Because people will use early like whatever footage they had of Pokemon Legends Arceus to say, well, the game's not running that well on the current Switch, so maybe there is a pro in mind. Or we could be looking at the exact same situation as games like, Super Mario 3D World, Hyrule Warriors, when it first got shown, where they're showing you the not so good footage right off the bat, and then they'll show you the better footage of the games later on down the line, after they've made improvements and they have done the work to optimize and stuff like that. Like, the thing that Nintendo actually does with their games. Who's to say that their code at that current point in time wasn't too bloated for the system? Which is why they compress stuff. Again, simple, logical answers to the things that people point at and be like, well, if this is this, then if A is here and B is there, then that must be C. Or I should say more or less, if A is here and B is there, then that must be D, completely skipping over the notion of another letter existing. Yeah, I know I had to fix my analogy partway through. I'm sorry. But I'm just saying, people, think critically first. Think about situations first before running off to this automatically has to be this because I saw these very minute details that possibly point that direction. Now, I'm not going to say that they don't point that way, but I'm just saying there are other alternatives. There are alternative answers to the things that people are looking at. Sometimes keeping your mind open to the different number of possibilities keeps you from disappointing yourself and being disappointed over something you hyped yourself up for. Seen it happen more than enough times in the gaming community where we get ourselves hyped up over something that was never promised in the first place. But I'm going to stop it there. Thank you guys very much for listening in. You can give me your opinions. Keep your eyes and ears up for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games and peace out.